Hi there and welcome to the Markets UK podcast, giving you a quick burst of inspiration, ideas, economics, politics, finance and culture. Okay, so in the run-up to my 39th birthday, I am acutely aware that I'm entering a period of my life where I no longer have the time to browse record shops, read music magazines, or rate indie bands, albums, and EP. I find myself instead enthusing about artists who were zeitgeisty and exciting about 18 months ago. I began to listen to Lana Del Rey after seeing her on Later with Jules Holland, and then watching a couple of her videos online. And part of the fascination I currently have with her is intimately connected to the fascination I have with America in general. Her song "Video Games" is accompanied by a home movie, cine-camera footage images of faded Americana. Black and white footage of Rat Pack Hollywood, complete with doomed, faded starlets and mobsters. In the background, fluttering stars and stripes flags fly, melancholy reminders of an age of national unity, imperial mission, and most of all unquestioned power long since gone. The fact that at age 26 she's come up with all of this, or has a team of people to help package the vision, is quite remarkable. But she is by no means the first artist to reference the death of the American dream and the wasteland that follows. The image of apocalypse in American culture is deep-seated in the modern era, and Lana Del Rey's music has got me thinking about it again. Dystopia in music, film and TV in the USA is a product of the 1970s, a decade that saw every certainty in US life collapse and crumble. American invincibility was challenged by the Vietnam War, and America's faith in the incorruptible nature of the presidency was rocked by the Watergate scandal. The belief in the all-conquering nature of the US economy was again shattered by the effects of the 1973 oil crisis and a longer-term slowdown in the US economy caused by the re-emergence of Japan and Germany as major world competitors. The advantages that America enjoyed in 1945 had been largely used up and squandered by 1975, and the strain of these adjustments could be felt on the social fabric of America. New York by the late 1970s was effectively bankrupt, and with large parts of the city lost to urban crime and deprivation. One only has to look at Walter Hill's camp yet dystopian urban cult classic movie The Warriors, set in a New York of the future, to see what a decade of low investment, poverty and crime had done to the mentality of New Yorkers. Many felt that they lived under siege, and throughout the era, fear of gangs on the underground became prevalent in the psyche of commuters, especially after lurid news reports of armed robberies. The lone serial killer suddenly became a fixture within American novels, movies and TV shows, with killers like Ted Bundy immortalizing this new, incomprehensible monstrousness, born of a society deeply ill at ease with itself and its past. The most potent metaphor for the collapse of the American dream came in the form of Sidney Lumet's 1978 satire Network. In this movie, Peter Finch played Howard Beale, a depressed alcoholic newscaster who has both a nervous breakdown and a divine revelation on air, and begins to tell the unvarnished truth during his nightly news. He implores viewers to turn off their TV sets, claiming that the news is bullshit, and tells them instead to lean out of their windows and shout into the night, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." The hidden beauty of this scene was in its basic fundamental truth. Americans were then, and are now, deeply divided and perplexed about the causes of national decline, and whilst as a culture they feel immense anger, this rage is rarely directed in a coherent manner. America in the 1970s and ever since has shouted its anger from the window at no one. After the Second World War, the future for every aspiring white urban family was eventually to become suburban. Vast belts of new commuter suburbs and whole commuter towns sprang up, orbiting large American cities that the affluent and aspirational now abandoned. Urban decay and racial division caused white professionals to flee the city centre, leaving behind only a handful of dissenting bohemians, while the rest headed off to the modern utopia. New homes in new invented communities connected to centres of work by new roads. The entire system was based on a ready supply of cheap fuel and near full employment, and after 2 decades of war and depression, it seemed a fitting reward for millions of Americans. This utopia is now all but gone. Rising fuel prices, job insecurity have laid waste to it. It was the physical embodiment of the good life as seen in the sitcoms of the era such as I Love Lucy, Bewitched and Blondie, and lovingly satirized in Back to the Future and Pleasantville. With it has gone much of the American middle class, the comfortable middle strata of society that had both time and money to be involved in the community and act as the glue that holds society together. In the 1980s, the first films and TV shows that documented the decay of suburbia were made, as divorce, family breakdown, unemployment, and social problems featured. The comedy of Roseanne in the mid-1980s was far darker and bleaker than anything Lucille Ball would ever have dared to produce, and the fact that millions of Americans connected with and identified with the show suggests that something within Middle America had changed. By the 1990s, films like American Beauty explicitly spoke about the breakdown of the compact between American corporate power and the middle class that serves it. On the day that Lester Burnham, played by Kevin Spacey, is forced to reapply for his job, he not unreasonably describes it as fascist. His wife, Carol, played by Annette Bening, dismisses Lester's criticisms of his employers and becomes like millions of other white-collar Americans, willing to accept permanent financial insecurity as a way of life. We come much closer in films like American Beauty or Glengarry Glen Ross to understanding what has happened to the America of the 1950s and why it has subsequently collapsed. The decision by Richard Nixon and by every subsequent president to embrace neoliberal economics as a cure for the stagnation of the 1970s has seen corporate profits rise and tax contributions from them and the super-rich fall. Meanwhile, what welfare benefits there were available to the middle classes have all but vanished as the final few strands of the New Deal were erased from the 1980s onwards. The era of full employment and jobs for life came to an end in the 1980s, and as income stagnated and credit was deregulated, Middle America has become reliant on debt to make ends meet. A sense that the decades of suburban affluence, of JFK and Pet Sounds, bowling, barbecues, picket fences and innocence, that in reality probably never existed, that this America is forever gone, is something that haunts the United States, in the same way that Britain now laments the passing of imperial glories and faces the future with uncertainty and doubt. We live in the world that was born after the mid-20th century social democratic moment, to paraphrase the late historian Tony Judd, and the assumptions and securities that existed then do not exist for us now. In many ways, this is partly due to our own desires and aspirations, the growth of individualism and the death of a form of working class and middle class collectivism that dominated the Western world from the 30s to the 70s. The state that existed once is not coming back, and in its absence we have to find sensible and workable individual alternatives for long-term financial security. This has been made more difficult in an economy where, until quite recently, the snake oil salesman has ruled supreme. Finding investments that are straightforward, transparent and reliable, as well as lucrative and based on sustainable markets, is the most important task of anyone today who is serious about safeguarding their wealth. Governments can't do it, banks and corporations won't do it, so individuals must. So if you're looking for a series of transparent, stable, and above all lucrative investment opportunities, visit our site, visit www.markets-uk and see our investment opportunities today. This has been the Markets UK podcast. Tune in next time for more opinion, thought, history, politics, and oblique dissections of modern culture. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.